You're watching State of the Union 2015, a Daily Signal special report.
President Obama completing his next to last State of the Union. We heard it all, and back to talk more about what the president had to talk about tonight is what I'm calling our political heavy hitters. And if you saw us before the show, you can see why I'm continuing that title. I want to thank Roland, James, David, and Crystal for joining me. I want to get right into it. I want to start with you, James. Let's talk about what the president talked about. And I want to start with the fact that he keeps talking about working with this Congress. And he said that while also saying that he was going to take action on his own on a couple of things as well. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I think you go through the laundry list of issues, and I thought it was interesting. They said, I'm not going to give a laundry list of points, and then he gave a laundry list of points. You know, there are really issues that this country and conservatives and progressives have been debating for decades. There's nothing that he said that wouldn't have come up in any debate between conservatives and progressives. So it's really hard to interpret that as anything other than just what you would expect from the president, which is a speech kind of laying out a progressive agenda, which is fine. But to pretend it's anything but that, I think, is not accurate.
Roland, how do you think he did?
Again, there are clear issues where you can have Democrats and Republicans standing side by side. I wish in the speech the president had said more about criminal justice reform. Because if you look at that particular issue, I mean, you have Republican governors who are looking at the fiscal irresponsibility of putting so many people in jail, putting folks who are nonviolent offenders. That is something that I think he could have challenged them on and said, look, let's change mandatory minimums. He signed one of the bill when he first came in, reducing the crack powder, the crack cocaine, the powder cocaine disparity, 101 to now 18-1. It shouldn't even be 18-1. It should be 1-1. It's the exact same thing. Cocaine is cocaine. And so I think he could have pushed on that. So there are those particular issues. He mentioned infrastructure. Look, that has always been an issue, whether you're Republican or a Democrat. You understand rebuilding the country. We just, we had that fundamental issue as well. So the question will be, and of course, infrastructure, that's also tied to jobs. And so the question will be, will Republicans in the House and the Senate move on that particular issue? So there were issues that you talked about where you could have Democrats and Republicans come together. The question is, will they actually take that kind of measure?
Can I just go back to that?
Sure.
Because you raised a good point. So criminal justice reform, I think Roland's absolutely right. That is something where there are a lot of conservative Americans that are deeply interested in criminal justice reform. It is something where the president could get together with them. He didn't really dwell on that or talk about that in the speech at all. So that kind of goes against your point.
Well, he didn't talk about it, but again, Attorney General Eric Holder, for the past
but it's
several
not
months,
in the speech.
No, I understand that. My point is, the Attorney General has been laying that foundation for the past 18 months, and he did mention, of course, the whole issue in terms of Ferguson and also protecting of police. But I thought, again, on that particular issue, he could have gone further, and that was an example where he could have said, there are Republicans sitting here right now who agree with me on this, and so that was. But that's still, even though he didn't. But my point is, even though he didn't mention the speech,
right. I want to bring Crystal
it is an issue that he can still work with him on.
But I think I was nodding when Roland was talking about criminal justice reform because Senator Rand Paul, as you know, Roland, this is an issue that he is seized with, reducing federal mandatory minimums. And like Roland said, that was a window of opportunity, Jim, like you said, that the president could have said, thrown a bone at Republicans. I know he could have called out Senator Rand Paul for working with our senator from New Jersey, Senator Cory Booker, but he didn't. And I think that goes back to when I was watching it David and I, when the president launched into the fair share narrative again, David started laughing, I started laughing, and we both said, this sounds like the speech he's been given every State of the Union, since he became president. And I think what that does right away, it turns off the Republicans in Congress. And then he pointed out what I found was really funny, and this was kind of my takeaway about the whole speech as far as domestic policy. He invited Rebecca and Ben in the State of the Union box to sit with Mrs. Obama. And if I was Rebecca and Ben, I'd kick back my shoes and think, wow, the president's we don't really have to work that hard anymore. Because his message to the middle class was, you don't have to pay your fair share because somebody else is going to pay it for you. And I think that's really, I think Americans want to be fair. We want poverty programs, but we want everybody to have skin in the game. And what he does over and over again, he says, why is the middle class some special class? Poverty is raging, and not in the middle class, and then he talks about all this free government, free childcare, free community colleges. Nowhere in the Constitution does that say you're owed that. at all. So I think it was just kind of comical.
So, David, what should he have said in this? What should he have said in regards to those issues?
Well, he's Obama. I mean, he can only say what he's always been saying. So I find this speech, as someone who spent a fair amount of time reading his speeches, not surprising at all. I mean, this is classic Obama. It's the following narrative. Together we can do great things. And by together he means the federal government. It's his understanding of American history. When we come together, i.e. when the federal government passes massive entitlements, we do great things. And if we keep on doing this, we can continue to do great things. And then there are these nebulous forces lurking that are the 1%, the rich who are not paying their fair share. I see an improvement in his rhetoric, that he has toned down the class warfare. I mean, the Occupy Wall Street spirit is still with him, but it's waned.
Okay, that was a funny one. That was good. That was as funny as the clap.
So in that sense, it's an improvement, but the bedrock liberal assumptions that shape his worldview haven't been dislodged by the past 6 years, and I can't imagine anything will make them change.
Now, the president also made reference to the situations in Ferguson and in New York. Thoughts on the fact that he did feel the need to bring this up, obviously, in the State of the Union, and what does it say about where our country is today in regards to race?
It's the State of the Union. If anybody was paying attention, you probably would bring it up. You can't have hundreds of thousands of people in multiple cities across this country taken to the streets and somehow act as if that is not an issue. He would have been crazy not to bring it up. I mean, it is an absolute issue, and it goes beyond. Again, a couple of cases. Look, I've been covering these type of stories for quite some time. It goes beyond Mike Brown and Eric Garner. It goes to Aiyana Jones in Detroit. It goes to Tamir Rice in Cleveland, Victor White III in New Iberia, Louisiana, Chavis Carter in Jonesboro, Arkansas, Ezell Ford in Los Angeles. And what you've seen, and this is a critical point here, you have seen, as a result of the protest, you've actually seen action. A lot of people forget, in the last Congress, okay, Congressman Bobby Scott had a bill that was passed last year when it came to police having to notify the Department of Justice when someone dies in their custody. It was passed in the House, stalled in the Senate. In the middle of all those protests, it passed the U.S. Senate because those senators were afraid to have their names on placards out there. And so, same thing, Los Angeles Police Department, they passed the body cameras, Houston Police Department as well. So you're seeing the kind of action. He had to bring that up because it is an important issue in America.
You know, I want to agree with Roland. It would have been nuts for the president not to mention what was one of the major cataclysmic events in the United States in the year. But the issue I take is, he didn't talk about any of the things Roland talked about. And what I saw in Ferguson was much like I saw his discussion of foreign policy. It was very much kind of a quick over, check the block in the speech, nothing really in any great depth. So I wish Roland was a speechwriter. I mean, criminal justice reform, yes, yeah, but that's not what we got on these really big issues. I mean, on the foreign policy issues, it was very superficial and went over it. And when I heard the word Ferguson, I was perking up and I was waiting to hear something that was going to move the nation. And I just saw.
Yeah, but
depth is never a word I look at.
I'm going to let Crystal in the conversation.
I think.
I mean, but we got this long narrative about this wonderful couple, and here we have something that is troubling the nation, and we got.
And the president. I think. I agree with you, Jim, that. Rebecca and Ben got top billing in the State of the Union as if, their story was a Ferguson story. And frankly, I think the racial divide in this country that the president claims has gotten a lot better. And what he said in one breath was, this isn't a white America, this isn't a black America. I've always said that. But yet he chooses to weigh in on Ferguson. He weighed in when Trayvon Martin was killed prematurely. No, he shouldn't have. He's the president of the United States.
He should have.
I let you finish. Quite eloquently make your comment. And then we have two police officers assassinated in the backs of their head who were really unarmed in many respects. The president made no mention of them. Why? Because they were not black and didn't fit this false narrative that Roland wants to embark upon, that black men or that police officers wake up, Eric Garner was gunned down by a bad police officer, white, and he was chokehold. Yes, you're right. I'm sorry, but if I could finish, but I guess I'm not going to finish because this is the Roland Martin show.
No. Hold on.
What I'm trying to say is, for a president who claims that he doesn't want to racially divide America in white and black, He did so again tonight. And what really is troublesome is that Eric Gardner, everybody agrees that was a heinous crime committed by a bad police officer. But police officers do not wake up every morning and say, let me go gun out for some blacks like the KKK did in the segregated South. That is a false narrative. And the president, if the president could come out prematurely and talk about Trayvon Martin's shooting death by George Zimmerman, who people want to make a white Hispanic, before the police could even come out and decide if charges should be brought, and we know how the trial in it, right? He couldn't come out when the New York police officers were gunned down. He issued a statement. He was on vacation.
So let's talk about, David, in regards to race and in regards to policy, how do you address that? What should President Obama have said to address this particular issue in this country? Because we can see in the conversation, this is an issue in our country. How do we address it? What should he have said? How should he have properly addressed it, in your opinion?
I'm from Canada. I mean, if there's one thing I know as a foreigner is you don't weigh in on race in America. It's an immensely complicated issue. We've been trying to figure it out as a country for several centuries. We mostly don't get it right. I think, I don't know. I mean, this is a big issue. I don't know how you tackle that one in a State of the Union address.
You didn't have to tackle the issue of race because, look, you had a white gentleman in Utah who was shot and killed as well. The president, first of all, has created the task force and asked for concrete ideas. He talked also about being able to buy 50,000 body cameras as well. This is an issue where people are affected. And in fact, we saw in Rialto, California, where we saw a dramatic drop in the number of police abuse complaints from citizens, but also we saw a tremendous drop in terms of police also protected as well. And so that's one of the things there. But again, I've never expected the president to go deep, to have depth in the State of the Union, because they sort of want to cover a variety of things. But I still believe he could have spent more time saying, again, here is a way where we can affect what is happening in America.
But in fairness, right, again, I mean, you're both talking about things that just kind of weren't in the speech. It's the president's speech. He gets to talk about the things he wants to talk about. As you point out, there were a lot of issues he could have talked about, but he did just do one over the world. And I don't think it's fair to say, well, it's a State of the Union address, he doesn't have time to go in depth in these things, because obviously on some of the issues, he went into some pretty specific detail.
I didn't say he doesn't have time.
So what we're talking about is
not going in there.
Yeah, but what we're talking about is his choices. So for example, let's talk about climate change. You talked about a lot about climate change as a national security issue. That was more than superficial, including a claim that climate change is an immediate national security threat, that the Pentagon had said that. So I know there's going to be a lot of reporters out there. I mean, I look at what the Pentagon says very, very closely, and I follow what they say on climate change. I'm going to be interested in what the footnote is to see where that claim came from. But I think it gets back to the point is it doesn't help. We should be talking about things that are in the speech. And you guys are raising really good issues, and I wish he had talked about those issues in the speech, but he didn't.
So on this point,
I'm talking more. Yeah, I'm sorry, Dave, but I was just talking more about his comment on Black and white America bridging that racial divide, which he hasn't done in his presidency. So I think that was a false claim.
If you go back to Jim's point and you look at the actual speech, I mean, I feel we're getting lost in the weeds, and you look at the big picture. 6 months from now, no one's going to remember the speech.
A week from now.
I was trying to be generous.
That's why.
So I want to point out, David finally found something the entire panel agrees on.
Yeah.
So I mean, this was more the old same. Like I said, I think he's rhetorically chastened a little bit, which is an improvement. Gone are these grandiose promises that he made in some of these early State of the Union addresses or in the inaugural address, which is to be expected after 6 years in office. But I don't find there's much to discuss here. Much of his proposals are not even going to get off the ground in Congress. I don't think there's much to discuss.
And let's talk about that relationship between the president and Congress. I guess after this speech and after what we saw, the response to President Obama making the comment about winning twice, we heard the reaction, we saw the reaction. What can we expect to see out of the president and Congress the next couple of years?
All right, first of all, let's just not skip over that. Whoever was the idiot clapping, you set yourself up to get smacked, okay? You don't, it's like, oh yeah, you're not running again. You know I kick your behind twice. I mean, when you lose a fight, you don't sit there like, I almost beat you. No, you got your butt beat. So so that line, we'll remember that one probably a long time. And so a great move on his part. He probably figured, after he yelled, you lie last time, let me come back with something.
Right.
But I'm sure there's some Republicans who were saying, the hell were you thinking clapping on that? Now you make us look like some doggone fools.